I am. You can go ahead, Commissioner.
Well, welcome everyone to the Remote Commission work session of March 15, 2021. The Port of Olympia is working diligently to address the threat posed by COVID-19 to the state of Thurston County, the state of Washington, and the United States. On March 16, 2020, the Commission adopted Resolution 2020-03 authorizing certain emergency powers in light of the COVID-19 outbreak, including invoking applicable emergency exemptions to meeting notice requirements and location restrictions of the Open Public Meetings Act. Pursuant to this resolution, the Port of Olympia Commission is conducting today's meeting remotely. The Port is following the guidance from Thurston County Health Department to take all efforts to prevent the spread of this virus and is acting in the interest of the safety and welfare of the public, the community, and our employees to limit its spread. So I'd like to ask if there's a motion to approve today's agenda.
Move to approve.
Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, we have an agenda. Thank you, Commissioners. The first item on the agenda is called Potential Storage of USS Olympia Artifacts. And the City of Olympia, I believe, is presenting. So I'm going to turn it over to either Jim or Keith.
Jim and I didn't have a chance to coordinate this presentation in great detail. So Jim, do you want to kick this off by providing an overview of our connection to the USS Olympia, and then we can work on the details of the request. I did send everybody, hopefully you received a copy of our August 24th, 2020 correspondence to the USS Navy regarding the disposition of some of these artifacts.
I'm sorry, I did not see that. Fellow Commissioners, did you get a copy of that? Am I behind on this?
Oh, I didn't see it. I didn't see it either.
No, we didn't see it, Keith. So pretend we never got it.
All right, that's helpful. Thank you.
So yeah, I guess I'll just give a quick recap of the history and then turn it over to Keith to talk about the details of the request. But I wanted to thank Commissioner Downing and McGregor and Zita for having us today. Part of our partnership is about maritime history and the waterfront in downtown. And as you know, the City of Olympia and the port have been long partners with our namesake vessel, the USS Olympia, which was decommissioned on February 5th after 37 years of service. And so one of the things that we're hoping to do is build a permanent memorial to the USS Olympia somewhere in Olympia in the coming years. And so the way that works right now, and it's fairly common for naval vessels parts to be made available to namesake communities. So we have obtained the anchor and the rudder from the submarine, and then in the next 7 or so years after the vessel has time to sit in dry dock or sit in dock and cool off, then we are likely to have the large con tower or the sail from the submarine, as well as some other pieces of the superstructure made available to the City of Olympia. And we're just really excited about that long-term partnership. And one of the things that we'll do this summer is bring together some community members who have been supportive of the vessel, the port. Hopefully you'll have someone that will play a role as well in a long-term conversation about what that memorial might look like, what it will cost, where it will be, and who the partners will be in the future on that project. So with that, I'll turn it over to Keith, and he can talk a little bit about the details of what we're looking for. And I just want to say thank you again for having us.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm hoping that Aspen can share our presentation here, and that way you can get a sort of a visual understanding of what it is we're requesting. And obviously this is the USS Olympia coming into port. And if you can go down to the next slide.
Can I just say, Keith, before you go, in that picture, Commissioner Downing and I are standing on the con tower. So if you look really close, that's the day we sailed into Bremerton from Elliott Bay.
Nice.
That's a pretty awesome photo and a pretty awesome story. And that was completely, I just went to the internet and grabbed the picture, and here's the one that I found. And it's obviously a beautiful shot of the ship coming into the port here. Next slide. This is the ship at dock preparing for decommissioning. As council member indicated, it has gone through the decommissioning process and is now literally being decommissioned and cut into pieces. Some of those pieces have been removed from the ship and are available for display or passage to the city of Olympia. Our mayor on August 24th sent a letter to the Department of Navy asking that certain parts of the ship be provided to the city. And the Navy has moved forward with that, saying that the anchor and the rudder are now available for acquisition, and they'll be available sometime in the beginning of April. So next slide. This is just a quick overview of the highlights of the ship. You all are probably familiar with it, but the ship served for almost 37 years. There was a close relationship and tie to the city of Olympia, and Councilmember Cooper certainly worked hard to maintain that relationship. Next slide, please. So here's a copy of the letter. As I said, we will make sure that each one of you get a copy of that, but we detail in that letter specifically what we're hoping to achieve. The rudder and the anchor are the two most easily obtained pieces, but as Councilmember Cooper indicated, our intention is to acquire the conning tower, what they call the sail of the ship, what Councilmember Cooper and Commissioner Downing were standing on as they came into port. Next slide, please. This is an example of the sail or the conning tower that has been displayed. I'm not sure where exactly this one is. This could be in Buffalo, New York, but there's several of these displayed across the country. Next slide, please. The rudder is the piece that's in the foreground here. That rudder is available today for pickup. Next slide, please. Here's another example of multiple rudders being displayed. Next slide, please. And here's a picture of the anchor. The anchor is relatively small for a ship of 300 and some feet long. It's not that big of a piece of steel. It weighs about 4,000 pounds. The rudder, on the other hand, weighs 38,000 pounds. So we really don't want to spend a lot of time moving that around. That requires a heavy lift crane in order to do that. So next slide, please.
That's the last slide, Keith.
All right, thank you. So our request of the port today is to assist us in handling these two pieces of the ship. And as Councilmember Cooper indicated, our hope is that in time that these pieces can be displayed, hopefully the anchor can be displayed relatively quickly, but the other pieces, the conning tower or the sail and the rudder and the anchor can be displayed together somewhere along our waterfront. I mean, that's just my perception is that it would make sense for them to be displayed somewhere along our waterfront. We understand the need to go through a public participation process, and we hope that the port can join us in engaging our community in a discussion about what that looks like over the next 7 years. So there we are. I'd be happy to provide more details, but basically what we're asking for of the port today is the ability to store the rudder on port property because of the heavy lift, literally the heavy lift, 38,000 pounds, and to work with us on displaying the anchor sometime in the near future on Port Plaza in order so that the public can see that piece of the ship, and to hopefully we can use that as a springboard for the conversations about how we will display the other portions of the ship that the the Navy has said they will facilitate us getting possession of. So there we go.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Cooper and Mr. Staley. Appreciate you coming to talk to us about the rudder. At this point, I'm going to ask my fellow commissioners if they have any questions or feedback on this presentation. Commissioner McGregor or Commissioner Zeta?
Go ahead, Commissioner Zeta. I'm still finding mute buttons.
Well, I want to thank you for bringing this to us. And I'm sorry that we did not get any of your materials in advance. So this is a surprise to all of us, at least I think to some of us. You know, I'm an Army brat. And when I was a kid, we loved to go to work with Dad and climb all over the tanks and the cannons. And I can imagine that kids would have a good time climbing on the anchor and the rudder and so forth, if it was displayed down there. But there's some questions about costs, how much space it'll take up, whether it would interfere with other uses. If it goes on the Port Plaza, of course, that's a space we use for events, and the events are very popular with the public, the beer garden, the concerts and things like that. People will have questions about the safety of those metal pieces since it was a nuclear sub. So of course, people will want reassurance about that as part of the public process. I'm sure you've anticipated that. And cultural sensitivity, I think, is a real important issue that we need to consider. We're giving lip service to diversity, equity, and inclusion, but will we take it seriously when we're thinking about bringing pieces of a military vessel and displaying it on land that was historically Native homeland? We should talk with the Squaxin Island tribe about this first. Maybe you've already reached out to them. We need to get their perspective on this. And finally, aesthetics is a question. There were 2 surveys done by Thomas Architecture Studios connected with the waterfront development planning the port's doing right now. And could we scroll back to those images that you had? Is that inconvenient to scroll back to those images? There was one pointy thing. What was that? Keep going further back. That one. Oh. Forward. That's it. Yeah. So that is kind of like the tower image that was offered as an option to the public for the waterfront development, and it was the lowest rated option aesthetically by the public in our survey number 2. So you may want to review the results of Thomas Architecture Studio and consider the aesthetic preferences that the public has already expressed. The lower structures like the rudder and the anchor may be more aesthetically acceptable. So just some things to consider.
Thank you, Commissioner Zeta. Commissioner McGregor?
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, I think this is exciting. I, as a veteran, as a shallow water Navy person, i.e. the Coast Guard, it's exciting. I was also on the port staff the 2 times the Olympia came in from 1889 to 97. So I was excited to have it alongside our terminal and the resulting activities that it brought. Also nice to see them come in during Lake Fair, I think it is. They would send down part of their staff to be recognized and be in the parade and all those things. So I think that there's been a lot of excitement around the Olympia, the USS Olympia during its life. And I think this is just going to prolong that excitement and the connection the ship has to the city namesake. So I'm excited about that. I do have some questions. Do they need to be stored inside the
No.
anchor and the rudder? Do they, can they be stored outside in the environment? Do they have to be covered? I mean, I don't know what all the particulars are that we have to get into on this. But I assume that at some point in time, this will all be put into a park operated by the city. And I know that Rotary Point Park, I call it that, across the way from the terminal, has a, West Bay Park, I guess it was called, or anticipated. That might be a nice location in the future. And I think that that's maybe where the city's looking to do something within their own park setup that would be outside of what our waterfront development plan was looking at. So, but anyway, I'm supportive of this. One of the things I'd like to talk about, are there any is there any implications for stormwater runoff? We have to treat all our stormwater in the terminal, at least 90% of it anyway. And is there any implication there? Has that been talked about or thought about as part of the whatever comes off these? I assume they've been decontaminated, but I don't know that for sure. I can't verify that. So one of the things we need to think about, because that would impact our stormwater discharge that DOE closely monitors. And as you know, that could be a real issue if we don't meet benchmarks, as we have been for the last 9 quarters now. So that's something to continue to look at. And as far as lifting the rudder, there were, I guess, maybe I'm getting into too much of the operational stuff, so I'll just shut up about that. I was thinking about what kind of slings, do they have hooks? How do they do that? That's up to the staff people to work out. So I'd like to do that. But one of the things I'd like to have at some point in time is, Council Member Cooper used partnership and partners. And I think that we need to be partners, collaborating on a lot of different areas within our own agencies and making better for the community. But one of the things that we've had an enormous problem with is the subject of military cargo. And, we have always, since 2007, when I came on, we've had issues with military cargo. But I would like to have, and we can open up a discussion to have some kind of support from the city when and if we ever do get the ability to attract military cargo here. Being equidistant from JBLM to Tacoma, it really makes sense that we are kind of a backup port for discharging and or loading out of military cargo from JBLM in the event of an emergency or a need. And I would really like to see us have a frank discussion on how do we get some kind of letter of support from the city of Olympia that they would be there to help us as partners in assisting with our service connections to JBLM and such. And so I think there's an opportunity here. I'm really excited about this opportunity, but I think that maybe we can take this to another step, and maybe this is a step in the direction of coming to some discussion on how we can have support from the city in the event that in the future we have military opportunities that we haven't taken advantage of in the past and would like to take advantage of, because that's what our marine terminal does, is handle cargo. So anyway, I think that meeting with the tribe is, of course, another positive that needs to happen, and I'm sure you will follow up on that or have already. I'm not sure, but I don't want to go on forever. I probably used my 5 minutes, and so. But thank you for bringing it forward. I'm hopeful and optimistic that we can work together on this thing, and then even move forward in other ways as we continue to do what ports are supposed to do, and that is handle cargo. So thank you very much for the opportunity. And I guess what we're going to need to do is develop an ILA, interlocal agreement on this to store it somewhere within the port area for future use. And so that'll all be worked out by staff, I'm sure, with Keith and with Sam. But anyway, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. Zita, you have a quick comment, Zita, or can I speak in a round robin fashion?
You go ahead. I'll go after you.
Thank you, Zita. Okay. Well, I appreciate Commissioner Zeta's comments about inclusion with the tribes. And I appreciate Commissioner McGregor's comments about it, especially, you know, let's face it, we've had some hard situations with military cargo. And so, you know, I close my eyes. First of all, you know, I'm sorry that the port hasn't gotten this rudder, you know. I mean, that's how excited I am about it. You know, I'd like, well, you guys you could jump the gun and you asked for it, and that's pretty cool. So I appreciate that. But we have had situations with military cargo. We've had resolutions against nuclear weapons, but not against nuclear power. And as we all know, this was a nuclear powered sub. But exactly as Commissioner McGregor stated, you know, we've had real issues with military cargo. And so when I close my eyes and I dream of an exhibit including this rudder, you know, it's standing up somewhere and it's got a big plaque on the side of it that says, you know, dedicated to the men and women of the submarine service, which is a branch of the military, obviously, the Navy. And, you know, I don't know that City of Olympia would get behind this in 7 years. I don't know that, you know, they would actually get behind such a memorial, which is, I envision that's what it would be. And so, you know, I think that it's important that we talk today and we get some ideas or thoughts out on the table so that port staff and city staff can formulate an ILA that works for both parties, and sooner rather than later, because I'm sure, Jim, that the US Navy is expecting some sort of response from you, like, you know, we'll go ahead and take this, please deliver it to so-and-so location, hopefully, rather than us have to go get it up in Bremerton. But anyway, and then, you know, my thought is this, that, you know, given these uncertainties about the position of the people of the city of Olympia, and given their uncertainties in past history around military cargo, people get pretty charged up. I don't know that this could become a reality on City of Olympia property. So I would favor, like, for example, if you're going to wait 7 years, because you have to wait 7 years for the conning tower to become available, then, you know, maybe in 4 years, we, for example, give you 4 years to come up with a plan and a location and funding and so forth. You know, the port stores it for 4 years. At the end of 4 years, if you don't have a plan and a place and funding in place, then the rudder just forfeits the ownership of City of Olympia. By the way, you know, I have said to, you know, I knew about this a few days ago because, you know, executive director mentioned it to me, and I did offer my front yard because, you know, I'd be happy to store that rudder as long as I'm a port commissioner. You know, I'd love to have that thing in my front yard, which we have about an acre. So you have some options. Now, of course, the City of Olympia has some options too, because I know you have things like maintenance yards and so forth, places to put it. I'm sure you could put it somewhere. It's just the cost of moving it twice, you know, renting a big crane and having to move it and so forth and so on. So, you know, I'm looking forward to seeing what the ILA looks like. But, you know, one of my ideas, and this is, again, because we commissioners have only heard this for a very short time, is that, you know, rather than wait 7 years, we come up with a more like a 4-year plan that City of Olympia has something concrete there. It's either going to be a go or no go inside of 4 years. And that way, and that works to your advantage too, because then you have a year or 2 or 3 to get some sort of parcel ready for, you know, and so on and so forth. And so I think that's a possibility. So I'm going to go back to Commissioner Zeta because I think she had a follow-up comment or question.
Yes, so some very interesting suggestions from my fellow commissioners. I agree with Commissioner Downing. It's not clear that the people of Olympia would support this. So a public process is well advised, and I appreciate that you're planning to do that. And outreach to the Squaxin Island tribe is critical, of course. Commissioner Downing suggests maybe we can just store it for 4 years, store things for 4 years and decide what to do with it later. I'm kind of surprised that you suggest that, because it didn't work out so well with the ferry. So you don't want to end up in a ferry situation, right? And putting it in your front yard, that might be kind of a conflict of interest, or it might be a gift over $50. Yeah. So Commissioner McGregor suggested that the next step would be an ILA, and that a kind of quid pro quo would be city support for future military cargo at the port. I would not ask the city for that quid pro quo. And as for the interlocal agreement, if the port staff wants to request that of the commission, I trust that it will come before us as an advisory item before action, because it sounds like there are some concerns that still need to be addressed.
Mr. McGregor?
One of the questions I forgot to ask is, what is the timeline? When does the Bremerton want to send this to you, and when is the timeline on that as part of the project? So,
Well, of course, this is hurry up and wait, and we've waited, and now it's time to hurry up. They are moving the anchor back over to the shipyard, and they are anticipating that everything will be ready to be picked up in the first week of April. So, things are moving relatively fast. Their hope is that, and just to be clear, Commissioner Downing, the city will be paying for the transport of the anchor and rudder down to the city of Olympia from the port. From the shipyard. That's an expense of somewhere around $4,000 or $5,000. Having a crane obviously adds additional expense. So, our hope again was to limit the amount of times that we have to do that. Crane's probably about $1,200. So the timeline is for the two pieces that are available, let's say 30 days or less. And then, as Councilmember Cooper has indicated, the longer term timeline really is somewhere over the next 7 years. Other communities have done this, and so there's a pretty tried and true process that the Navy is recommending, and that's forming some sort of local community advisory group or steering committee that will help to develop plans for display of these artifacts. That can occur, starting, literally soon. And like Commissioner Downing was suggesting, over the next 4 years or so, developing a plan for how are we going to deploy and display these artifacts in our community so that they become part of our community. And I think that this is a good opportunity for the city and the port to engage in those conversations about what the port means in our community. I participated in the 2050, the Port 2050 visioning process. That was an impressive process. And it did not limit the types and amounts of shipment. So, let's continue that discussion. And I think this agreement puts in place the framework that allows us to continue that discussion. So I hope we can do that.
can I continue? I had another comment, then. I appreciate that, and I think that the between the two staffs, we can get a timely ILA together, because I for one would love to see the rudder, the sail, the anchor, and whatever else you're able to commandeer off the Olympia when it's time to actually put those pieces out. And so I would very much like to see an ILA, and if it's even correct, we could even do a special city port meeting to deal with the ILA and approve it, or however that process is going to happen. But if we because of timeliness, there is an opportunity that we could bring it to the Port Commission under action other, because of the need to give you some certainty that you have a place where it's going to go. And so that's what I would propose. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Commissioner. And I did have one follow-up thought, which is, I personally would break the two apart, meaning the anchor and the rudder, or in some ways, two different issues. I think that port staff can analyze, where that might fit in on Port Plaza. We've already got 2 or 3 anchors, one in the tidelands and two up on the concrete from different sources. So, I think if I'm not mistaken, that's a mushroom anchor in terms of if I know my anchor types. And so it doesn't look, really big, and what was 4,000 pounds. So it's probably, 8 or 10 feet long. So I think that would, potentially we could deal with those separately, but I'd lean on port staff for their thoughts about that. So good. Zita, Commissioner Zita.
I appreciate Mr. Staley's reassurance that the Navy recommends a local advisory committee to help with the planning. I think that's a great idea. And I would like to recommend 2 groups to include in that planning process. One is Veterans for Peace. They were very active when the Port of Olympia was considering military cargo. And if you can get their support on these installations, you will have a better chance of getting local community support. Another organization is 4FOR. It's a group of mostly older people who are interested in social justice. So I would strongly recommend that you include those 2 groups in your planning process. Not the only ones. I'll email some other suggestions to you, but those are 2 that are top of mind.
Okay, great. If we're approaching the end of our half an hour, Councilman Cooper or Mr. Staley, do any other comments or response, or how do you feel about what we just said?
Keith, do you want to go first and I'll wrap?
Sure. Well, I just wanted to respond to Commissioner McGregor's comment about the potential stormwater impacts. The rudder has been completely sandblasted, so it is literally an inert piece of steel at this point. They have stripped all the paint off. Their recommendation is to cover it with a couple coats of Rust-Oleum, and it will last another 1,000 years. But that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, and I really appreciate sort of the breadth and depth of this conversation. You really picked up the items that we have to make sure we wrestle with the broader community. And I'll just add that on top of the Navy process, the City of Olympia doesn't just design parks in the under the cover of darkness. So we use a community process in just about every movement we make in our park system. And I anticipate that we would do the same thing here and work really closely with you and the community around that siting. The Squaxin tribe, we have a really good relationship, both the port and the city do. And so I think that's a really good idea to run that through them up front, make sure that they're on board. I think that the nuance for me around the submarine is, when it comes out of active service, it's really like a veteran, right? And our community has always been super supportive of veterans and active duty service members. And it's typically the mission of the military where we run awry a little bit. And I'll just say, I can't commit to anything for the city. I'm one council member, of course, but we're always open to a frank conversation with the port, about whatever you want to talk about. But I'll just suggest that around military cargo, that's a conversation we have to have with the broader community. The city of Olympia has never taken a position that I know of against military cargo, and was even sort of flexible in that previous nuclear-free ordinance as well. So, I'm 100% on board for those conversations, and really just look forward to working towards the partnership and appreciate the suggestions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Councilman. Commissioner Zita.
Mr. Staley, thanks for your reassurance about sandblasting the anchor or rudder. I worked in nuclear physics laboratories for many years, and the one that was actively producing nuclear reactions, they wouldn't let pregnant women down in the lab area in the afternoon because the nuclear reactions irradiate the steel, and then the steel puts off radiation after that. And after decades of this, the steel becomes too hot for anybody to be around. Now that was fusion, but fission is similar. It can also make steel radioactive. So it will be important to find out and reassure the public whether those artifacts from the nuclear sub, how radioactive they are and how safe or not they are.
Thank you.
Once again, thank you, Councilman Cooper and Mr. Staley for coming to visit us today. Thank you. And we hope to talk again soon. Thank you. So with that, I'm going to move on to the second item for today, which is the retreat follow-up. And we have
Commissioner Downey, can I just have just a summary, a summation here, just to make sure that my
okay.
I'm understanding the direction from the commission. And what I'm picking up on from the conversation is that you would like staff to proceed to work with the city of Olympia to develop a draft interlocal agreement for both bodies' consideration at some as yet to be determined time frame. I think Mr. Staley has made his the time frame, the urgency there. I don't know whether or not we're going to be able to meet that. And I'm uncertain as to whether the commission would like to have this issue brought back before them under an action other item or as an advisory and then an action. So clarification of those would be helpful for us to proceed.
Good. Well, first of all, so basically, do we ask board staff to proceed with the ILA?
Right.
And what sort of time frame and
Correct.
anything else we'd like to potentially see in
Right.
that ILA? Commissioner Zita?
I would not ask staff to work on an ILA at this point. The city says they have plans to have community outreach. The Navy recommends community outreach, and I would be interested in looking at an ILA only after that process, if we do it then.
Thank you, Commissioner Zita. Commissioner McGregor.
Yeah, I didn't pick that up that they were going to have an outreach on regarding taking the equipment. I understood the outreach as to what they were going to do with the equipment once it got here in the future. But based on what I heard, the timeline is within the next 30 days. And I don't think that all of this is going to happen within the 30 days or less, as Mr. Staley already voiced. So I think we need to have the ILA from our side, at least put together, and where we agree this is what it should look like, and have the staff do that and bring it back. The timeliness of moving it forward, it will depend on what the city needs to have done, because once those things are on the truck and it's on its way, they've got to handle something when it gets here. And I just don't know when that is, but it sounds like the Bremerton is willing to move this stuff off and move it here. City's nickel to transport it, but in any event, the timing just may not allow for a lot of process here, but just to get the equipment. So I'm fine with the staff moving forward with an ILA and then following up with the commission, and depending on the timeline as to whether it's under action other or follows the normal protocol.
Well, thank you, commissioners. And so, Sam, I think that, I'm fine with moving forward with an ILA, and I agree the public process needs to come. I mean, it's just one of those things, like the Navy's going to go, do you want it or don't you? And if we take it, then we can work on the ILA. And to be frank with you, I guess Commissioner Zita had some good comments about radioactivity, but assuming there's, zero to minimal radioactivity, at some point we can cut it up for scrap metal. So there's not a big downside to accepting it and then having it go nowhere. But that's why I suggested an ILA that says, City of Olympia, come up with a plan approved by the council within 4 years, or else the property reverts to ownership by the port, and then we can do with it what we want. and really seriously. And, I think that's the way to go. And because they want this short term, so I think, my suggestion is to have a rough draft of an ILA a week from today, and 2 weeks later have the final version, which allows you a little bit of time to work with the city and have some drafts go back and forth and so forth. But, that's what I think what Councilmember Cooper is asking for. I mean, we don't know what the Navy's timeline is, but it could be that if they don't see the truck show up before the end of April, they'll do something different. So yeah, Zita.
I understand that two commissioners support drafting an ILA now before there is any public process. I caution my fellow commissioners to reconsider that when it comes to us for consideration later, because we have gotten in trouble with the public before for this type of thing. And I think we would be wise to err on the side of taking our time, consulting the public, consulting the tribe before we move forward with any action like an ILA. So I will ask you again, if and when this comes before us, to please reconsider.
Well, Commissioner McGregor, why do you think that Councilmember Cooper is coming to the port? Because honestly, I go on bike rides throughout Olympia and I pass maintenance yards, which have plenty of acreage. And, I just don't get why he's asking us to store this large object.
Are you asking me that, Commissioner?
Yes, I am.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I am.
I have no idea other than the fact that we have a crane and we have the equipment that can offload it and then an area to keep it in. I don't know how or what they use their maintenance yards for other than all their maintenance equipment. I don't know that they have a space where they can safely keep it. And so I'm having to assume here because I've had no further conversations with them other than what we've had today. But I just think it's a space issue for them.
Okay.
Commissioners, really quick, this is Aspen. Jim is still here. He actually has his hand up. I suspect he wants to maybe answer a question. Would you like me to let him back in so you guys can ask him something?
Well, that's a good question from my fellow commissioners. I'm looking at the clock. We've been talking about this for 44 minutes. So 2 out of 3 commissioners, favor working towards an ILA. So, I feel like we need to move on to the next topic.
Can I suggest we let him come in just for a quick, give him another minute and then let's move on. So maybe he has something to offer.
Sure. Okay with that, Commissioner Zita? Okay. Go ahead, Aspen. Go ahead, Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you. And out of respect for your time, I'll just be very brief. We have
Okay.
space and we want a partnership with the port and you have a crane on site. So it's an additional $1,500 for us to site a crane and unload it. We have no problem storing it if you don't, but we wanted to start with this partnership first.
Okay, thank you. All righty.
Great. Commissioners, if I might, in keeping with the outcomes of our retreat, if I could ask the commission to make a very quick motion indicating that you are requesting staff prepare a draft ILA between the city and the port for your future consideration. That'll make it really clear that the commission has given us that direction.
Point of order, we don't take action at a work session.
I believe, again, in our discussions with Ann McFarland, it is not a final action in a work session. And so, and instead that you are simply directing staff to prepare something for action at a future meeting.
I suggest we discuss that in our next agenda item to get clarity on that issue.
Yeah, the chair overrules Commissioner Zita, and I think it's appropriate when the executive director is asking for an indication of a direction that it's proper. So all in favor of asking staff to begin working on the ILA, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say nay.
Hey,
There you go. Okay. So we got marching orders and we'll take this to the next step. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our second item, which is retreat follow-up with Holly O'Neill. Welcome, Holly, to our wonderful port.
It is always a pleasure to be with you, and nice to have Heather here too, because I haven't seen you for a while, Heather. That was a really interesting discussion. I really appreciated listening to it. To this last point about taking votes in the work session, let's definitely clarify that. And we might also want to swing back to our rules resolution on that, because I had the same question you did, Sita. I was like, how does that work? So anyway, welcome everybody. Here we go. My name is Holly O'Neill, and I've been serving as your facilitator to help you get your processes tightened up and clean and clear, so that really to provide the framework for you to be doing the work that you are here to do and not have to spend a lot of time on your processes, because it's all clear. So that's what we're going to do for the next, let's say 75 minutes, so we can keep on track. I am going to do a little share. I have some suggestions for our process today that I am going to offer, since for efficiencies, we're going to see if we can get some efficiency here without sacrificing any meaning or value. Okay, here we go. We should be on the first slide. Can y'all see this? It's got like some different colors. Yeah? Nod if you can see the screen. Great. Okay, so here's what I was thinking, that in your packet, you have the chart that came out of our last meeting with Anne. And I sent it back and forth with Anne to make sure I was understanding. And then Zita, thank you for adding your piece. So you also noticed that Commissioner Zita put in like her listening of that one, the transcript from that one discussion. So we are going to talk about that. I think it's the first one. But regardless, we're going to get up on the screen. We'll go through each row in the chart. I'll read aloud the recommendation and ask if you're in alignment with Anne's recommendation. And then I'm going to ask the commissioners and the ED. And actually, since we've got Heather here, if you catch anything, I'd actually, would suggest that you might also flag. So if you're like good to go, there's no trouble here. You'll just do a thumbs up. Okay. If you either like are not in alignment or you think that we really need a clarification, then give me a thumbs down. So this is just to figure out, do we need to talk about it more? Got it? That's what that part means. If there is even one thumbs down, then then we will go ahead and discuss, and we'll hear that person's counter argument or their need for clarification. All right. And we can go, I'm going to go through all my thinking about our process, and then we'll make sure y'all are happy with it. Okay, so if I see a thumbs down, and the thumbs down just means I don't agree, or I really think we need to talk about this a little more, I'm not clear, then we'll hear your arguments. And then we'll just open it up for discussion if there's other points that need consideration. So during that section, I'm going to really encourage you to try and stay on the same team, and try to not repeat ideas so we can still move efficiently. But we do want to hear if there's a concern, and we want to honor that. After we've heard from everybody, I'll ask again for a thumbs up or thumbs down. This time, it's really just the commissioners, because this is your work. This is your job, is to determine your rules. So if two of the three commissioners, I need to move this a little. Sorry. If two of the three of you give a thumbs up, then this will serve as our understanding for how we will proceed as a commission to conduct our business. And this is how staff will proceed in their responsibilities, unless a commissioner makes a formal motion to do so at a future meeting, regular meeting of the Port Commission. Okay, so that means we're going to assume 2 out of 3 is our common understanding. but it does not stop you from the right to bring it forward to a future regular business meeting. Okay. And then lastly, rules resolution. So as we move through the chart, some points may need to be included or updated in the rules resolution, and we'll flag those as appropriate. This is really going to be your work. Like I can't say for you, oh yeah, this needs to be in the rules resolution. So I'm relying on all of you to make sure that happens. Okay. So I'm going to just flash through these again. Here's the first page. Is there anything that doesn't make sense to you or that you feel uncomfortable with and needs to be adjusted? Because otherwise,
hey, Holly,
yeah.
This is Heather.
Yeah.
I just, because we're in Zoom webinar screen share on the thumbs up, thumbs down thing,
Yeah.
the only person I think who might be able to see, it might be my settings, but anyway, I can't see anybody but you and the screen share.
Can you shift on your top? What are you on a computer, Heather?
I'm on my iPad.
Shoot. Okay. Yeah, I think iPad settings are a little differently. Do you have a thing where you can see gallery view?
Not when you're screen sharing.
Okay.
Anyway, so just if you're gonna
Yeah.
when you move on to the topic, if it's just clear from your talk that Commissioner Zita or Commissioner McGregor has their thumb down, we're going to talk about it, that's great. I just wouldn't be able to tell otherwise, is all I'm saying.
Okay. I could also, okay.
If this is only my problem, it's so not a problem. I was just saying that I had this limitation in my technology.
Yeah,
And Heather, it may be an iPad problem, because on my laptop, I can, even when the screen is sharing, if I put it in standard or gallery, I can see all the little thumbnails.
I think Heather's suggestion is a good accessibility suggestion.
Yeah. The other thing I can do is just as I see a thumbs up or thumbs down, I can just say what I see on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll have it out loud in the record. How about that? Okay. And Commissioner Zita just gave a thumbs up. So did McGregor, so did Downing. You guys are great. Okay, does that work as a process? I'm sure something will go awry. I just want to lower our expectations here, but that's what we're going to try. Okay, good. Okay, so let us then move to, I'm going to take that little PowerPoint down and I'm going to pop up. God, I'm just having this fear that I'm going to, Zita, do not let me forget the question about work session votes as we go through this. Just have this like little anxious moment that we don't want to miss it. It's on item 5. Okay, can you make sure we catch that? Okay, thank you. Anything else, gang, before I share the screen of the chart? Alrighty. And if I miss you on the screen, please use your voices to speak up. I'm going to do the best I can here. Okie dokie. So at this point, you should be able to see the chart. Are you with me on that? Good, thank you. So, number 1, I actually think is going to be the juiciest. Number 1, number 2. And what I tried to do when I put the final notes together is we had some that I had too much content bundled in the left-hand side. So we got a little like, what are we voting on? And that happened in a couple places. So this first 1 and 2 are, I tease them apart and we want to go through them at a time and see where we're at. So here we go. The number 1 has to do with how edits of meeting minutes are handled. So the recommendation is that staff provide action minutes in the packet. At the meeting, commissioners vote to accept the minutes or offer a specific correction with evidence. Then the commission votes. Now, note, this is a really important point. Note that Anne's suggestion is that there's no back and forth, that it all happens like Aspen takes the notes and then it comes to you at the meeting and that's where you make the correction. So I think this is important because that's actually different than how you're currently doing it, which is on the left-hand column. You with me? Okay, so I would like to see, like, do you agree with Anne's recommendation? So in her recommendation, there ain't any back and forth. It's just like, she gives it to you at the meeting. And if you have a change, then you do deal with it then. So I'd like to see a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Like, you love Anne's recommendation. Let's go for that. Or thumbs down. I'm going to take that as the thumbs down. Sam?
No, I'm just, I was wondering if you
Yeah.
wanted, because we're using a much simpler form of action minutes that perhaps Aspen can show you of just like really how little there is in there to edit.
Let's do that.
Okay.
Yeah, and just if there's a process thing, do raise your hand. So Aspen, do you want to do that?
Yeah,
That's
Absolutely. I have one ready for you guys here.
Oh, sweet.
So this is the February 8th meeting minutes, and it kind of just, this is just down a couple pages, but just to show you guys kind of the new format. Like Sam said, I just wanted to quickly mention and remind you guys that we have moved to true action minutes, and they're much more concise than they previously were. I'm only really listing factual statements such as motions made, the attendance record, and what presentations were given rather than conversations that were had. So I don't believe that with this new format that there will be many red lines offered. However, if you guys think differently, of course, I'm open to having that conversation and happy to move in a direction that you guys are more comfortable with. It's just my suggestion or observation that I don't see very many red lines being offered with this new format. Like, as you can see here, there's very few sentences listed. I'm simply saying who made the motion, if it was seconded, if it passed, and what presentation was given, really. So yeah, I just wanted to quickly mention that to you guys.
Good. Yeah. Commissioner Zeta, please.
Thanks for sharing that, Aspen, and thanks for your explanation of the new format for the minutes. That's useful to see. Since Executive Director Gibney jumped in and suggested that we look at an additional document, I will also suggest that we look at the transcript of our previous discussion, which Holly said was useful.
Okay. So what I'd like to do right now is, Aspen, can you go up and down so everybody can see what you're looking at?
Like from the beginning to the bottom, is that what you mean?
I was only seeing a section, so just scroll, kind of scroll slowly. So this is what it looks like. And the question really is about efficiency. That kind of, we want things efficient and we want them accurate, right? So
Correct.
Keep scrolling.
I also did want to mention too that I found it really useful a couple of meetings ago, Commissioner Zeta, when you mentioned that there was an incorrect attendance list and you guys made a motion to correct that then and there. I found that very useful as well. So just so you know, for efficiency reasons.
And it might be even more efficient if we could send you those and correct them in advance of the meeting, so we don't have to discuss them.
Yeah, that's the question that we're about to, that's what we're trying to figure out right now. Okay, and it looks like you don't have names of people giving public comment here. You just have one person gave public comment, correct?
Correct, but I do list their names here under others if they did give comment.
Oh, at the top, attending,
Yes.
and then others. Okay,
Mhm.
so who else was at the meeting? Got it.
Exactly.
Okay. And then Commissioner Zeta, you'd like me to flash or maybe Aspen, because you've got this, you can stop and I can share. Commissioner Zeta asked that we also look at her edit.
It looks like Commissioner Downing has a question as well. He's raising his hand.
Go ahead, Commissioner Downing.
Well, I just kind of like to shorten up this discussion I think that I saw what Commissioner Zeta shared, and I think that's perfectly fine. So in other words, and in spite of the fact that Aspen is trying to show us how simple minutes are going to be going forward, I don't want to minimize the fact that we've had months and months and months of issues over minutes. So, but I think we're close to resolution, i.e. Aspen sends the minutes out. Please, Commissioner, review these minutes. We send back a correction or two. And then when it comes, and then it goes straight to the meeting with a red line version. Like one commissioner corrected the spelling on somebody's last name, and we all just say, that's great, boom, done. And I don't know what else there is to talk about, but that's my view.
I agree with Commissioner Downing's suggestion. It's the same suggestion you made at our retreat, and I think it's a good one.
Okay, so that is a different, so I think, thank you, Commissioner Downing. I think that's why we are really close to coming to unity on this. But we have three different, what I'm hearing is we actually have three different paths forward. And that's what we're trying to sort out here. Okay. So Commissioner Zeta, do you feel, I think that Joe just described what you're trying to describe with me popping it up. Do you still want me to pop that up on the screen? Because we're still debating the same three options, I think.
I would like to, I'd appreciate the gesture of respect to see the transcript that I prepared that says just what Commissioner Downing and I said in our previous conversation.
Yep, no problem. No red line version, commissioners vote. Are you in alignment with that? Not 100% most efficient. I'm going to shut up. You can read it by yourselves. Okay, are we done with that? Everybody feel like you've seen it?
Right, and the last comment, Holly, that you made, we're not in alignment with Ann's recommendation. Yeah, I realize that, but
yeah.
it works for this commission. I think that would work for, and Commissioner Zeta and I think that would work for this commission, so.
Okay, so I want to break it down then and say this first one, how are the edits of meetings handled? If you look at the left-hand column, that's what you guys are doing now. You with me? If you look at the column, so I'm on the left-hand column of number 1. The right-hand, Ann's recommendation on number 1 is that there's not even comments that go first. It just is like Aspen does the minutes and then you see it only at your meeting, okay? Really option 3, which is this thing, Zeta added a step to the process for red line versions. And here was Ann's recommendation on that. There's no bandwidth for commissioners to review draft B, the red line version, before it is included in the packet. To do this would tie up the process in a red tape loop of version control and waste staff time. The next opportunity for the commissioners to make changes is at the meeting itself. So I think that, I know that this is like, but once we get this figured out, we'll be in great shape. So we're trying to get it clear. And I'm glad we're doing the most, I think this is the most confusing one. So let's see if, let me see what the best way to handle this with our process. I'm actually think just because we have 3 things on the table, I'm going to ask people to speak to, like option A, option B, option C. Okay, so we're adjusting our process for a minute here because I'm still seeing like we're needing a little bit more discussion. So do you understand the different options? Okay. So Sam, I'm going to ask you to speak first here. So this one, how are edits meaning? This is like stay with the current version, go with Ann's recommendation, or red line. So stay current, go with Ann's, or red line. Okay, am I laying those out in a way that
Mhm.
people make
Mhm.
sense to people? Okay, go ahead.
So you like my comments on that?
I
Yeah.
want to
So
listen to- yeah. Mhm.
So I would recommend going with Anne's recommendation. I think that the meeting minutes are so simple now that going through the iteration of rounding up the comments while they or corrections they do sometimes happen. I think they can be even more readily done in the meeting. I mean, there's just so little content there, and it's so very clear and really quite binary in its nature. We could certainly stick with the existing process where if there is a correction, you want to send it back. I do not recommend the sending out of a red line version. I think that we quickly end up eating a lot of resources that way because believe it or not, it takes quite a bit of effort and time to get responses back from all three commissioners. Then she's handling potentially red lines from three different commissioners that may or may not be in agreement with each other. And so we can foresee the real possibility that we have meeting minutes that are going in where we have comments that directly contradict each other. And so I'm not quite sure how you would handle that. And it just seems like a tremendous amount of effort for something that should be a fairly routine process. And indeed, in all of the nonprofits and government agencies that I've worked for, I've never seen a red line version go out before. I just never have. And instead, meeting minute corrections are always offered in the meeting. So for me, it's much more of a resource management thing. And given the workload that we expect of Aspen already, I would not recommend the third option.
Okay. So this is the first option. Can you see my little arrow? Okay, that's the first option. This is the second option. And down here is the third option. Okay. So yeah, Zita, would you like to go next?
So do commissioners get a chance to speak or only the executive director?
No, all of you. I'm sorry if I wasn't
Stopped
clear.
you.
I'm asking each of you to speak because there's enough complexity here. I think we all need to speak. That's what I was imagining. Do you want to go next?
Well, I'll just reiterate that I agree with Commissioner Downing's suggestion that we get a red line version with all suggested changes. The minutes format now, as Aspen showed us, is simple enough that I don't think that should be too complicated. If the scenario that Sam suggests comes up, where different commissioners have different suggestions, that could be indicated. That's not so hard to indicate. And as far as efficiency and use of resources, sometimes we have spent a lot of time at meetings on minutes. That's commission time, staff time, and the public's time. And if we get the suggested changes in advance to consider, I hope that we can make the approval of minutes quick at the meeting.
Okay. Hey, Zita, can I just ask, so would you envision then in the packet that there would be like a red line version with everybody's comments and then a clean version? You just want to see the red line version in the meeting, in the packet?
I don't care. I don't care.
Okay. So either one would be fine. Yeah. Okay, Commissioner Downing, I see your hand. Your turn.
Well, let me reiterate that I'm 90% in agreement with Commissioner Zita. And I'll reiterate the process, which is Aspen listens to the meeting or attends the meeting, writes the minutes, sends them out to the commissioners for any comments, any adjustments. If she gets any, those red line comments, of which we all state that there's going to be very few going forward because we've got these action minutes that are extremely brief. So there are going to be very few red lines going forward. And those will be in there for the commissioners to see, and they approve that red line version. and we're done. So to me, that's pretty darn straightforward. And the only difference I have with Commissioner Zeta, yes, I do care. I don't want to see 2 copies of minutes when we come to a meeting. I just want to see the red line version, and Commissioner X corrected a spelling on a last name, or corrected a date, or corrected a semicolon, and, you know, we all 3 approved that, we're good to go, boom.
Okay.
So the
And then-
red line version is like the final version if nobody says anything.
Got it. So Commissioner Downing, if you do have, and everybody, I just really appreciate your patience. If you're starting to get frustrated, take a deep breath, because we're going to get through this. Commissioner Downing, I have a question for you. If you have, and let's just kind of play it out. If you have 2 commissioners with contradictory edits, and we only have that version in your packet, I'm just trying to think it through. How would you then proceed on the floor?
Well, I mean, you know, I guess that's a good question, but in some ways you say facts don't lie, meaning, you know, in action minutes, this person either, I mean, if you have an argument about spelling of somebody's name, that's going to be an interesting argument, I can't really think of 2 commissioners wanting to change the wording. Let's take something controversial like sea level rise. The commissioners indicated their support of City of Olympia's position versus the commissioners were lukewarm on City of Olympia position. You know, those would not be, you know, action minutes. So what we would do in that case, we would say commissioners discussed City of Olympia's position, period, on
Right.
sea level rise. And so, you know, sure it could be, but, you know, I'm supporting, you know, I support Commissioner Zeta's concern over, you know, just getting the minutes right. So I'm willing to, you know, I think this is a way for us to, you know, come to agreement quickly over any set of minutes. And I don't foresee that we'll have
Being a
two
problem.
different red lines over the same phrase or sentence or what have you.
Yeah, and it also seems like, can I just add that it seems like if you continue with the practice and even, you know, of the timestamp, right? Then you can just all go back and check the timestamp on the video. And then it should be pretty straightforward, which was the original original thing that we've stated again and again. If you're going to do correction, we need the timestamp or it's going to eat up too much time. Does that make sense to you? Does that work for you? I see a head nod. Okay. Commissioner McGregor, you're next.
Okay, so one of the things we have to bear in mind if we're going to go this way is the timeliness on our responses. We can't wait till Friday night at 4 o'clock to come back with a red line version we send to Aspen, because she's going to have it in the packet ready to go. Means pulling it out of the packet at the last minute, sending it out, so the only things I'm looking for on the way minutes are being done now is, are the attendees correct? Is there any spelling errors? Are there any grammatical errors? Other than that, Aspen has been doing a good job of capturing what's been in there. Prior to that, when we had supposedly action minutes, they kept getting longer and longer until we had paragraphs talking about different issues. And when we had paragraphs, that's where we came up with, well, that's not what I said, or that's not what she said, or I said this. And so that created part of the issue of trying to get minutes approved at a meeting. I think the way that Aspen has set it up now, there's very, very little to debate. She's given us just what was that somebody made a presentation, what it was about, and the commission had discussion, or the commission took a vote and recorded the vote, whether it be a roll call vote or a motion passed, and what the motion might have been. I don't even know if the motion is in. There was a motion made to approve whatever, and motion passed 3-0, or motion passed, period. So if they want to get back into sending the red line back out, we have to be aware of the fact there's a timeliness matter in there. We can't wait till Friday night to send back, well, here's my red line changes. We need to, because she sends them out and asks for response. I'll get on it as soon as I can, usually within the day. And I've sent back to her any changes if there has been any, but mostly it's just those 3 things. the attendee was left off, somebody had a spelling error, or like David Trout for one of them, Commissioner Zeta pointed out he had 2 T's on the end of his name. Well, that's fine. You know, we can get that back to her, but I don't think we need to have a red line version coming out. But if the other 2 want it, I'll go along with it, just to move things along. So.
Okay, so, hey, Heather, you're like down at the bottom of my screen here. Do you have anything you want to add? Or Aspen?
I do not have anything to add. I don't think that this process description changes anything in the current rules resolution, which already speaks to action minutes. So.
Okay. So let me give a stab at what I'm hearing then. And also, Sam, since you have a different perspective, I want to just see if there's anything. I do want you to just speak to this last suggestion I'm going to make, which is what I'm hearing is the sense of the meeting. So it looks something like this. I'm looking at a PowerPoint, so I can't change it on the screen. But the way it would change is that Aspen sends out draft to commissioners. Individual commissioners send any corrections, and then we need a timeline in here by X point, right? Because she's got to have it in enough time with the timestamp, right? Of the red line. And then we'd get rid of this point. Aspen accepts or declines corrections. Do you see where I am? She'd not do that. She would not accept or decline. She would just have the timestamp and the corrections. And then those would come to your meeting, and then you'd vote to approve. And if there was stuff that was in contrast, luckily you'll have the timestamp right there, and you can just figure it out. Does that match where we're going? I'm seeing nods. Bill, does that work for you? So we would just make sure to add the timeline here and
That's
get
fine.
rid of this.
That's fine.
Third one.
I'm ready to move on. I'm fine.
Okay.
I would make one tiny change maybe.
Yep.
Commissioners add any corrections with timestamp if necessary. And if it's spelling of a name, you don't need a timestamp.
Okay. If necessary.
Just add if necessary.
Okay.
Or as necessary, something like that.
Okay. Let's hope we don't have to debate the as necessary. Let's have it as necessary means like stuff like changing spelling, okay? Not like content, okay? We all understand that? Okay. All right. You guys, that was our hardest one. That's why it's first. So please give me, Sam, I did say I was going to give you one last chance. Anything else? I mean, this is different than what you preferred, but this sounds like the way the commission wants to go. Are you anything else you want to say?
That's fine as long as we have clarity.
Okay, great. So can I see a thumbs up on what I just described? Thumbs up. Yay. Okay. Then that will be our understanding. I will clean this up with Aspen, and we'll get that out to you. And I'm not hearing we need a change in the rules resolution.
Yeah, and
Yes.
and just for Heather's sake and for that was 3 thumbs up from all 3 commissioners.
Oh God, thank you. Sam, do that every
Got it.
time.
Thank you.
Because I'm gonna. Okay, everybody take a breath. We're now, I think, a lot. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so we're on number 3. If, when, and how would it be appropriate for the commissioners to present slides? Anne's recommendation is that it's the staff's responsibility, not commissioners, to prepare materials for presentation, including PowerPoint slides, maps, or other materials. So where are we at today with the recommendation? Are you still, and again, the process is if you're still if you are in agreement with Anne's recommendation, it's a thumbs up. If you think we need to discuss it more, it'll be a thumbs down. We'll hear your argument and then see where we're at. Okay, so on number 3, going with Anne's recommendation, I see a thumbs up from McGregor. I see a thumbs down from Zeta. Commissioner Downing, where are you at?
I would just comment that I think I prepared my own slides twice.
Mm-hmm.
One did not work out and the other one didn't make much difference. So, I'm okay to thumbs up and go along with this because I don't see a big need to prepare my own slides.
Okay, and Sam, thumbs up or thumbs down on this? Your thumbs up on the recommendation? Okay,
Let can I ask a point of clarification?
you sure can.
Okay, so similar to what was done today, Commissioner Zeta put in a slide.
Mhm.
In moving forward, that would not be acceptable if we agree to this. Am I reading that correctly? That's what I'm reading. Okay, so, but if a commissioner has a presentation to be made at a commission meeting, let's say the Capitol Lake, Commissioner Zeta sits on, I think maybe it's Commissioner Downey now sits on it, but let's say there's stuff presented at that and he sits as the port's representative on the work group. And so he's going to be making a presentation on what was presented because we may need to be taking action on any number of things relating to Capitol Lake, as an example. So would he prepare that slide presentation since he's making the presentation? But what we're trying to avoid is having commissioners present slides in contrast to what is being prepared and presented by staff during their presentations. That's my question.
That's a really helpful question. So, and especially because Zeta also had a thumbs down. So we are now moving into discussion because any one person with a thumbs down indicates we're talking. So Sam, I think you had your hand up. Go ahead and why don't you answer Bill's question if you can, and then any other comments you would like to make. Then we'll move.
Sure, and I think the Capitol Lake process is a good one. You know, I sit on the funding and governance a work session. We do have things that are be coming back before the commission. And so I think the more appropriate process would be for a commissioner to provide documents or PowerPoints to the staff. And we can do everything from, you know, making sure they're meeting our brand standards and we got the right fonts and things, and include those in the packet. So I think that if you are including materials in for each other's information, such as like you often will include something in from the TPRC, you don't really have a discussion about that. We just put it in the packet so each other see it. That's one thing. But I think that for making presentations I still think that the best practice is that we have a staff member assigned to do that, and that they make the presentation, because you're then, you know, particularly if there's a decision to be had, then we need to be making sure that that's going into our process.
Got it. Commissioner McGregor, did that answer your question?
Kind of. Go ahead. I'll talk about it a little bit later because it's also in number 4. So
Heather's hands up.
Yep. So Heather's hands up, but I think Zeta, you were next in the stack, and Joe, I see.
Well, I think let's go to Heather, please. I'll speak after.
Great. Go ahead, Heather.
Thanks, Commissioner. I just wanted to just offer for right now, the way this is treated in the rules resolution is if a commissioner wants to offer what's broadly characterized as supplementary materials, then they have a submittal deadline of the Thursday before the Monday meeting, and they have to be marked Commissioner offered supplementary materials, but they're not described as slides or a presentation or a memo. That's anything. There was a concern at one point when, just by way of drafting, that at times it wasn't clear what had been prepared by staff versus what had been prepared by commissioners. And so the labeling was added to make it clear that what was in the materials was a commissioner produced item. So depending on the outcome of this conversation, I think this section would need to be revised.
Got it. And that describes, I believe, your current process, what you're doing now. Okay. So Commissioner Zeta, do you want to speak? Are you ready?
Thank you, Heather, for reminding us what our current process is. And that's the process that we used this time for me to provide the transcript of our discussion at the retreat on the previous item. And thank you, Holly, for allowing me to share that transcript. It represented our perspectives and it informed our discussion usefully. It would be a loss if it was not possible for commissioners to provide informational material like that. I think we should keep our policy as it is.
Great, thank you. Okay, Joe, your turn. You're muted right now.
And no additional comment at this time. Thanks.
Okay.
And Holly, just let me be clear how, we do have the process for where commissioners can add supplemental materials, and they're included in the packet, but they're not readied for display. So we oftentimes put things in the packet that are included as backup, et cetera. And that's the thing that I hope that the commission can appreciate, is that particularly in this form, but really it's in when we're in our in-person meetings as well, is that the ability to anticipate everything else that might wish to be displayed that's hard to really guess. And quite frankly, I think it's really disruptive to the meeting to then, be looking around and trying to portray up additional documents when we have a PowerPoint that is presenting the topic. And then lastly, I think that it really then begins to blur the line between what is the commission's role and staff's role. And I'm very strongly aligned with our subject matter experts recommendation and Ann McFarland that it is fraught territory when we blur those lines.
Yep. So let me just point out, I think I want to flag, thanks Zita, I see your hand. I think this is what McGregor was just talking about, is where we really have these two, if you look at number 3 and number 4, how they're related. So what I'm hearing is that there's, the supplemental materials, adding supplemental materials is what's in your current resolution, and that you have that, offered by the commission, and that the distinction is whether or not those would be popping up on the screen. So in a session like this, where we're working through our processes, we're in a work session. I'm going to show what we need to show to make sure we get clear. But the difference would be is that when you're in a public meeting, or not a public meeting, but in a regular meeting, that we would not be popping up different versions. I think that is one of the distinctions we're trying to make. So Zita, are you ready? Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Ann. Yes, so popping up that transcript today was useful for our discussion. And if there is uncertainty about facts, whether it's at a work session or a regular commission meeting, it may be useful to be able to see information during the meeting to resolve any such uncertainty. For example, on September 28th last year, staff provided a transcript of a previous meeting discussion in order to motivate the discussion on that day. However, the transcript had serious errors. I provided an accurate transcript the same day. It was not shared. Commissioners were not able to see it, and missing the accurate information had a severe impact on the discussion and the outcome. So this distinction between work sessions and regular meetings, and whether or not information can be seen, is an artificial distinction. Staff are perfectly capable of sharing information that's in the packet. It happens at POCAC meetings. It's not anything in the packet is displayed upon request at POCAC meetings. I go to them, I see it happen. It happened here. It's not hard to do. There should not be a distinction. If there's information that is required or potentially useful for clarification and for better decision making, I see no reason why it should not be accessible to us in a meeting.
Okay, yeah. Commissioner Downing?
It just occurred to me a little bit more of an overarching viewpoint on this issue is that opening the door to commission provided documentation of any sort then gets into the area of what is factual and what is opinion. And individual commissioners have no clout, but we as a body represent the Port of Olympia. So I believe that information has to come through staff so it's assured to represent the Port of Olympia as it is rather than individual viewpoints. So it's problematic to open the door to supplemental materials from individual commissioners because, you know, it might be factual, it might not, and then who's to judge? And so from that standpoint, I think it's best that we, you know, when we have something to say, you know, we work through staff, whether or not we're reporting on something, or if we have something to say, that's our opinion, well, then we bring our voice to the commission. But in terms of documentation that's included in the packet or presented at a meeting, it's bound to be individual if it doesn't come through staff first. And so that's why, you know, I'm on record as saying, you know, we should go through staff.
Okay. So Joe, I see your hand, Zita. Let me just see if I can get us. What's happening right now is I think we're talking about item 3 and item 4 together right now. And we're going to double check against item 4 first, and then we're going to double check against item 3. So item 4, Joe, are you with me? Because I'm going to ask for you to kind of translate what you just said into this. The rules resolution right now that you have is that it would be included in the packet with, you know, this is for, you know, provided by this commissioner. And then item 3 would be whether or not it gets popped. A commissioner can say, I'd like that popped up on the screen, right? Those are two different things. So in that case, would you want to still have commissioners be able to put things in the supplemental packet or as supplemental to the packet with their names, the way you've got it currently in the rules resolution? Or
No.
would you want to change that?
No, I'd change it and I'd just say, you know,
So you then-
presentation materials of any sort, packet or in person or at the meeting, need to come from
Got it.
staff.
So in your perspective, you would stay with the yes on number 3 and the yes on number 4 in terms of following Ann's recommendation. Am I catching you right? Okay. So Zita, would it be okay if I let Bill go next and then we can come back to you in the order? Okay. So Bill, why don't you go on this?
So I appreciate 3 and 4 are the same but different. Let me say it that way.
Yep.
Number 3 is what I'm saying is that if I, as the representative to the EDC board, there is an issue that comes up that requires some action by our commission to support something the EDC wants to do, and it's brought up and will be, I know it's coming up at the next meeting, and I need to prepare something to get a formal action by our board, then what I'm saying is that then the commissioner should be able to put that together. Now, maybe they put it together using staff. I'm fine with that. Feeding it to staff, let them put it into a format that brings it up. But the commissioner needs to provide that information for that. 4 has to do with, we're having a finance report on debt and where we are on bonds. And there's staff has put together a presentation. They're bringing it forward, but then a commissioner will supply supplemental information to that may not have all of the accurate information, or it might not be factual as Commissioner Downing relayed. I don't think we should be doing that. I think we need to change that, and we should not be adding supplemental materials to a port staff presentation. So I think the difference between those two, commissioners have obligations in the community that they have to bring back. TRPC is another one that'll ask for action on something. The commissioner should be bringing it back for the commission to provide a vote if it's something other than TRPC's meetings or, you know, minutes or their financials, because those are pretty routine. But so I think that's the difference between these two. A commissioner can prepare it, but I think they need to use staff to do the preparation, and they should not be allowed to put supplemental information is because they may be getting information from sources other than what staff has in their records. That's what I'm saying. So,
Okay, so if I'm going to reflect back what I'm hearing, which is that if you have materials that are because you're representing a committee or something, you're still going to be taking that through staff, working with staff to make sure it's really still the staff's responsibility to make sure it's clean, it's accurate. But you were actually doing a bunch of the legwork right there to get it to staff, right?
right.
Am I catching it? And then it comes as part of what is presented. On number 3, you might speak to it because you're the one there, but really it's staff's content, it's staff's material. Am I
Right.
right?
Right. And I want to make clarification here on the word staff. We have one staff person.
Yep.
We don't direct staff. We have one staff person. So we need to feed that information to the executive director, who will then resource it out to someone who can take care of putting together. And she might say it's okay to you contact the commissioner if you have any questions on what's being said here. But it really is up to the executive director to direct staff below that level. So I just want to clarify all through here that it use the word staff. It should be the executive director. So
Great,
that's
thank
it.
you. Appreciate that. Commissioner Zita.
So I agree with Commissioner McGregor. In our service on committees, we sometimes have to share materials for commission consideration. We can share those materials directly, and our staff really shouldn't have to rework them at all. And yeah, we do need to provide those materials. Commissioner Downing.
I'm sorry, can I, what you just said, Zita, was different than what I heard Bill saying. I just
don't see a need for an extra step of reworking anything, because we get materials directly from our committees and we can send those directly to port staff, and those can go directly onto the packets. So I don't see why our staff should have to. If I get materials from TRPC and they say, please share this with your commission, I give that to staff and they put it right in the packet. That's what we've been doing. And it would be weird for staff to rework any of the TRPC materials. And I see the executive director nodding, so that's good. Great.
So Sam, that matches your understanding?
Yeah, so sharing information, we do that readily. And again, we can provide that as materials for commission reports. So that, but those typically are not shared. But I very much agree with Commissioner McGregor, is that if you have something that's actually going to require an action on the part of the commission, then if you provide those to us, then I can work with the chair, make sure that it's on the agenda, make sure that we have the materials provided. And again, it could be the same material, but it's just going through our process to then be displayed.
Okay. Yeah, Commissioner Zita.
So to finish my thought,
yeah.
I agree with Commissioner McGregor on that point. We need to share materials occasionally from the committees that we're on. But Commissioner Downing is saying that we should not share other factual material. And his assumption is that commissioners are likely to be biased and that staff's material will be accurate. Commissioners may indeed be biased. And that is why we have in our resolution that will have this disclaimer on the bottom saying this is presented by such and such a commissioner. The assumption that material provided by staff will be accurate is not a good assumption. And the transcript of September 28th is the huge red example of a big error that was made that had an impact on discussions and decisions, and accurate information with timestamps was provided and never shared. And that is the problem I'm trying to avoid. We should be able to correct misinformation, and we should not be restricted from providing that corrected information. Now, there is the assumption that any information shared by an individual commissioner may be biased. That's a fair assumption, and therefore the disclaimer will go on the bottom of any such material. But if it is a transcript, such as the one I provided today, such as the one I provided on September 28th, with timestamps and verbatim testimony that can be checked, then what is the risk of providing information that gives us more accurate data to base our decisions on?
Thank you, Zita, for that. So I think where we're at right now in our process is just to keep us moving along is we're going to go through number 4 and number 3. And the question is, should the rules resolution be changed? I'm on number 4 first, to conform with best practices and recommendations to not allow for the inclusion of supplemental materials. And that was Anne's recommendation, that you change your rules resolution so that there is not more supplemental material. And that's distinct from what McGregor offered, which is how a commissioner, when they're reporting from a committee, would work through the executive director to get that content. So right now, I'd like you to do a thumbs up if you're in agreement and a thumbs down if you're not with item number 4, and then we'll do number 3. Okay, so number 4, thumbs up or thumbs down. Joe, where are you at?
Well, so generally speaking, I think we can make a carve out for when a commissioner is bringing materials directly from a subcommittee or a committee that they serve on. So I amend my initial position in that small way to allow that carve out if they're simply, and the other way to get around it is if it's not supplemental materials, if you put it on the calendar, but generally speaking, you know, commissioners report out of their community activity during commission reports and discussion, which we don't really have an agenda within an agenda for that. So, you know, I'm generally supportive of, you know, when you're bringing materials directly from a subcommittee, that would be the only carve out.
Okay. And that might be, but I'm still, the way that McGregor described it, at least, and I thought I heard a similar thing, it's still going through your executive director to get it to the packet. It's not really a separate thing.
Okay.
Right?
In that case, I'm fine with number 4.
Okay.
Well, just to be clear, supplemental material that's a factual transcript, such as the one that I provided today, also goes through our staff.
Right. And I think in this case, what we're saying is that staff would then have the decision-making authority as to whether or not to put that in the packet.
So that's a little bit different than what we're voting on, isn't it?
What we're saying, what we're voting on right now is, should the rules resolution be changed to conform with best practices? And the recommendation is that against commission adding supplemental materials that would go as an addition to, rather than going through staff or through the executive. So correct, you're absolutely right in what you're saying, Zita, is that this would not, you're adding, you know, I've got a different version of the materials wouldn't go into the packet. That's correct. That's what this is saying. And I think we can move on, because I'm really hearing that you're a thumbs down, right? You're a thumbs down on this. Yep. I think Bill's a thumbs up on this. Could we do a show of thumbs? I'm going to say it out loud. So I see a thumbs up from McGregor, a thumbs up from Joe Downing, a thumbs down from Zita, Commissioner Zita. Okay.
I just want to be clear with my fellow commissioners. That would, are you affirming that would mean that the transcript I provided today that informed our discussion earlier would not be allowed? Is that correct? You would not allow a factual transcript like that with timestamps?
I personally would not allow it, Commissioner Zita, because this is not our meeting. I mean, it's Holly's this segment is Holly's presentation. So if Holly were Ann McFarland, like she did the other day, she'd ask the group, do you want to see supplemental materials at this time? And then we vote on it. But instead, Holly allowed it. So, it was brief and quick, and that's fine. But frankly, it's Holly's meeting, not yours. So, I feel like, Holly should be providing the materials for this meeting.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Joe. Okay, so then we're going to see a thumbs up or a thumbs down on item 3, and that has to do with the presentation. It's the staff responsibility, not commissioners, to prepare materials for presentation. And that just really restates what Commissioner McGregor was saying earlier, and that would be what is presented to at your meetings. So can I see a thumbs up or a thumbs down on this one, please? And I'll say it out loud. A thumbs down from Zita, a thumbs up from Downing, a thumbs up from McGregor. Okay, so what this means, I want to go back to our process. This is a rules resolution change. So we need to be clear on who is going to take the next step on clarifying the language in the rules resolution. Who would that be? Sam, I'm looking to you right now. That would be you. And then you'd bring that back for us on behalf of the commission, and then you guys would finalize your vote on that. Okay, great.
I think, point of order here, if I could, or clarification.
Mhm.
I think Heather and Sam would work on that wording and then bring it back.
Okay, is that correct?
That
Sam?
would be that was my perception.
Okay, and I'm seeing a yes nodding from Sam. Heather, is that also your, and I'm seeing a yes nod from Heather. Okay. I'm going to do a time check because I'm so glad we're doing this. It's so much fun. And I'm glad to see Joe drinking water. Good job, Joe. Keeping your health while we do this fun stuff. And so I need a time check. How much more time do we have on this?
Oh, about 12 minutes.
Oh, Lordy.
Commissioner Downing, the presentation on the sea level rise interlocal agreement can be quite short, so I think we could take some time from there. So I think if we had at 15 minutes at the end of this, we could do the last 2 items. I think we can get through this fairly quickly.
Okay, good. Thank you for that, Sam. So Holly, we can push on till about 4:45 or earlier, hopefully. Okay.
Great. You guys are doing great. Let's keep going.
Can I make a point of clarification? I hate to keep doing this, but if we've already got agreement on these things, do we need to rehash them? I mean, 5, 6, 8,
That's why
not
we're
8,
looking,
10 we're already in agreement on. So I don't know that we need to have further discussion on them, but I'm just asking that question.
I think some of these we will not need further discussion. I agree with you because I think you've figured them out between the time of our work session. So let's press on. Zita, I see your hand, and we're on to number 5.
Holly, you asked me to remind you at number 5 about
that's
the
where we're at
work
right now.
session question. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So can we there was a question that came up just even today about how votes happen when you're in work session. I think we're all clear that we need a vote to direct staff. You have said that, and Anna said that. Everybody has said that same thing. And Joe, I think where we got a question came up today is how does that happen in the work session? And so did you have a thought on that, or does anybody else have a thought on that? Yeah, go ahead.
I do have a thought, which is that, the chair is instructed to run the meeting, and so there can be point of orders or point of appeal, and in which both cases, if the point of order is disputed, then we call for a vote supporting the point of order, whatever it might be. Likewise, if there's an appeal, the appeal needs to be seconded, and then it goes to a vote. So the chair makes a determination that an individual vote is when you're instructing staff, or you're trying to get, in the old days, our executive director liked to ask for a head nod. that was a little less formal, but, we want to have a good minutes record that, 2 or 3 commissioners felt a certain way and voted in that way, and it's reflected in the minutes. And beyond recommending to staff that they pursue some sort of piece of work, it's probably not appropriate in a work session. So I think we need to use that voting in a work session judiciously. So, but we can do it.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, Commissioner Zeta?
I agree with Commissioner Downing that our rules resolution says we will not take action in a work session. That means making a motion and taking a vote. Ordinarily, that's an action. So that's our rules resolution forbids that, and our rules resolution takes precedence over the Roberts rules and made that clear. So if we want to be taking votes in a work session, that would require, I think, a change in our rules resolution. But before we do something like that, we should think about what's the right thing to do. What do other bodies do in work sessions? Do they take votes? What does the county commission do? I think it would be useful to review. I appreciate the usefulness of giving clarity to our staff in work sessions as well as regular meetings, but I think we are getting into muddy waters and losing some clarity as to what's the purpose of a work session if we start taking votes in work sessions.
Okay. So I'd love to hear from both Sam and Heather. Sam, partly because you were the one who started with, I need clarity right now about what I'm doing. And so
Commissioner McGregor had his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner McGregor.
Yeah,
First
first of all, there are exceptions to taking action at a work session, and it has to do with emergency, such as hiring snow plows in order to clear the runway. I mean, those are things. At today's action that we took was not approving an LIA, but just directing staff to develop one for the port to consider. And I think that's just giving direction to staff to do something to bring back to us. We're not voting to approve an ILA or that we're going to approve one, but develop one to bring back for us to review. That's kind of and so I think that was more like consensus wise, we want to have staff do an ILA, bring it back so that we can actually see a product in which we then can take action if we so desire. But so I think that, but work sessions are typically to flush out different things and come back and ask staff for more information and that type of thing. And I don't know that that's considered, and maybe we should not consider that as a formal vote to do something. We're just asking them to provide more information. And that can be done by consensus. So.
Okay. Sam, can you speak to this, please? Because you came.
Sure.
And then we'll see.
Yes, in other jurisdictions that I've worked in, it's very common for the work session to have procedural or informal direction given to the staff at what next steps to actually bring something back for formal consideration. So as Commissioner McGregor was saying, it's not consideration of any type of an agreement or contract or plan or anything that the commission would be adopting or approving, but rather instead to tell staff, yes, that you have direction from the commission to proceed to the next step. And that is very common. That's has been something that I have done and as Commissioner Downing alluded to, used in a more informal fashion of, do I have head nods and have it be very informal. That is one way to do it. I think that what we have experienced here is that has led to some confusion as to whether or not direction was clearly given. And so that's why I'm asking for the explicit direction on this point, but other jurisdictions that I've worked in that have the same type of setup, they don't conduct business in the work sessions. They often give the procedural direction to staff to move forward with something or to not move forward with something.
Yeah, which is pretty much what you all did today is what I watched. So you had a procedural, and McGregor, I appreciate that distinction too that you just made about, we're not approving an ILA. We're directing staff to develop something so that we can come to a vote. Heather, can you add any light to this discussion? We're on number 5 again.
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge is there's been some disagreements, as Sam alluded to, regarding the direction that was given after the fact, and then an inordinate amount of time is spent trying to parse who said what to whom. And so I think that the consensus, when I've worked with the commission and on an action or a draft or something of the sort, I try to solicit what the majority consensus is for what the revision is or what the step is, but that can be a bit cumbersome and lack clarity. And so I second, for purposes of efficiency, and to avoid conflict, for the commission to have some type of process that comes out of a work session item where there's to be next steps for staff, where there's something on the record as to what the agreed direction is that's provided, whether that's to me or to the soon to be my replacement, or the executive director or whomever is receiving that guidance, because I think that's the challenge here. So, I mean, that could be incumbent upon the chair to do a summary at the end of the item and provide that direction and get head nods from his or her fellow commissioners. That would be a less informal thing, but I'm not sure that type of action of, I want an action taken confirming that 2 out of 3 at least commissioners are providing this direction to staff is the same as the type of action that was intended to be prohibited from being taken at a work session when those rules were enacted.
Okay. Heather, do you think it would be helpful then to clarify that in the rules resolution? Because I'm hearing some good, some useful distinctions here in terms of what happens, for procedural direction to staff versus a vote that would happen in a regular meeting. Do you think that would be helpful?
Clarity is always helpful. So if the commission was willing to provide that direction, I'm sure a mechanism to allow for that type of procedural direction action at a work session could be drafted. That could be incorporated into the resolution if that's what the commission desires. But clarifying, it's not the same as acting on the item. So it's not approving a contract, it's not approving an agreement, it's not authorizing funding, it's not approving a settlement. Like those things all need to go through the process or qualify for the exception that Commissioner McGregor referred to for an emergency.
Okay. So commissioners, do you feel like, so the question on the table is, we're really parsing out for number 5. I don't think we're in any disagreement about number 5 in a regular meeting. What we're parsing out here is how do we, when we have a procedural matter to direct staff to simply move forward on working on something, the request from your director is that we would actually have a vote, which is exactly what happened today. So are we in agreement on that direction? Is the first question. Are we in agreement that there would be a procedural vote? And then I'm going to ask you, is there something we need to do to formalize that? Okay, yeah, Zita?
The reason our rules, one of the reasons our rules resolution specifies that we will not take action at work sessions is because of the Open Public Meetings Act. We have a commitment to announce the things we're thinking about doing to the public in advance and hear public comment in advance before we vote on doing things. And we do those things at regular commission meetings, not at work sessions.
So how would you suggest resolving this this issue that has come up repeatedly about staff or even Heather's work feeling like they don't have clear direction.
I
the
would suggest
their
that we
work
find out, I'd suggest we find out what the county commissioners do. And we don't know at this point. The executive director has given some indirect indications, but I'd like to get some direct input from the county commission staff to find out. And I would I would like to base our actions based on direct input from county commission staff.
Okay, Sam, you had a comment on that?
Yeah, I've been in contact with the county commission staff well over a year ago about this very process. And so, you know, again, I think that what we're proposing is very much in keeping with many jurisdictions throughout Washington state. I don't think it's unusual in the slightest.
Okay, so this is a question. Yeah, Joe, and your mute's on.
Well, I just have to say that we're trying to, I disagree that there's any potential OPMA violation. In 5 years, we've never even come close to an OPMA violation. And certainly the spirit of this request from our executive director for clarity, I mean, how can anybody be opposed to that? How can anybody be opposed to transparency when the work session minutes are going to reflect that 3 out of 3 or 2 out of 3 commissioners expressed a desire to go to a certain direction and communicated that to staff? I don't know how anybody can be opposed to that. And how can the taxpayers be opposed to a well-functioning port? I mean, we're trying to get well-functioning. And so, you know, I'm heartily in favor of, you know, preserving, you know, taking a motion that we ask staff to pursue a given ILA or what have you. So I'm 100% in favor of that at work sessions.
So you're holding that your interpretation is that for procedural matters to direct staff, calling for a vote, which is what we've got in the same column, the importance of a formal vote for direction to staff, informal, formal, that there would be a vote that would direct staff on these procedural items would be allowed and appropriate within a work session. Am I hearing you correctly? Okay, so I'm going to test for agreement on that concept. Bill, where are you at? You're a thumbs up on that? And Commissioner Zito, where are you at with that?
I would
Thumbs
be,
up.
I'd be happy to vote for this. I'm like this. I would be happy to vote for it if I had an indication from county staff that this is what they do.
Okay, well, I think we're still at a 3, we're at a 2. I appreciate that. And I think that we're not looking necessarily for consensus. So I think that the next move then would be for you to bring that as per our process, because I've got 2 thumbs up and a sideways thumb, which I'm going to take as like not in support. Then the next step would be for you to bring something to a regular meeting as a recommendation or proposal. Okay. I think that's where we are in our process. So I'm going to, does that make sense? That's a process we set up, but I appreciate your willingness to flex with this. That is excellent. Okay, gang, let's keep going if we can. We're on 5, we're down to 6. Are we clear that the commission shall vote to add agenda items? Everybody was saying yes on this. Can we keep going? Let's just see a thumbs up. Are we good on this? Still the same? Beautiful. Number 7, I think you guys dealt with number 7 already, right? Same thing, like any commissioner, if you're not happy, you can amend. There's the clarification there. We're still on number 7. Yeah, Commissioner Zia, I see your hand up.
Yes, we did deal with one part of number 7. The commission confirmed at our last meeting that public comments will not be included in meeting minutes. there was a second part to that. And the second part was, who makes decisions like that? The staff made the decision to add the public comments with the support of 2 commissioners. And the staff made the decision to stop including public comments. So that question is unresolved. Who makes decisions like that? Does the staff make decisions like that without consulting commissioners? That's what happened last year. So that's, do we want to discuss that, or do we want to leave that up in the air?
Yeah, Commissioner Downing?
Thanks. I don't have a photographic memory, but I believe in our last commission meeting, as we're reviewing minutes and we had a discussion about which minutes to approve and not approve, we voted 2-1 to not include written comments in the meeting minutes. And so I think, does that mean we're done with this topic?
That means that we just did decide the issue. Now we did. However, we don't know who makes decisions like this in general. The staff decided to include written public comments in the minutes last March. And the staff decided to quit putting them in last winter without consulting the commission. So that question is still unresolved. Who makes those decisions? Does the commission make decisions like that? Or is it okay for the staff to make decisions like that without consulting the commission? That we don't know.
Holly, I'm going to recommend, in the interest of time, we only have a few more minutes left. I really think that if we concentrate, we can get through a lot of the other things. Recognizing this is an outstanding question, but I think that if we, I just see some anticipation of trying to make it through this table.
Yep.
So,
So Bill has a comment, and then I'm going to keep moving on.
well, my comment is we took an action at the last meeting, and as Commissioner Downing said, we already agreed that we're not going to include written comments. Therefore, that takes care of the answer to question 1 and to question 2 moving forward. So in my mind, this is a done deal. We need to move on, and the staff now has clear direction that we're not including written comments in minutes of the commission meeting.
Implicit in Commissioner McGregor's response is the suggestion that this kind of decision is a decision for commissioners, not for staff to take without consultation of the commission.
I think that the question, we're going to move on here. But I think that in at least in the world that I work in, which is in the world of policy governance, is that the commissioner, you're going to vote, you're going to make a decision, right? And then the staff is going to interpret that. If you do not like their interpretation, then you can say, you didn't interpret this correctly, and I'm going to move forward. I'm going to put a motion on the floor that is going to narrow the scope or adjust the scope of the decision. So I think that if you want to bring this up again in terms of clarification, Zita, then definitely you should do that. We're going to keep going though.
I want to keep this.
Because we're still on number 9, which is the same issue. You can still vote to amend, rescind, or reconsider.
This is an outstanding issue that has not yet been resolved. Let's just keep it on our list of outstanding issues.
So again, you could make a proposal then to bring it, to put it on the list, right? That's the process. Okay, we're on number 10. Can individual commissioners direct board staff to gather information? I think you're all on a yes on that. Yes, let's see a confirming thumbs up. We're still the same. Bill, Zita.
What one are we at? 10?
We's on number 10. Okay, Sam, you're still in a vote on this. We got to move this along, guys. Zita, where you at with number 10? We're still good?
Everybody agreed.
Okay, everyone agreed. Commissioner Zita, I hope so. Okay. And recommend. We're on number 11. We're on the roll. Number 11. Yes, Zita, I see your hand.
I'm concerned. We have several items that we're trying to rush through, and this is what happened at the end of the retreat. I'm not comfortable making decisions this way.
Okay, so we've got just some recommendations. I hear you. of 11, 12, 13, and 14. And it's 4:40. How much? I had till 4:45, right?
Correct.
So what would you suggest? We could just do some thumbs up, thumbs down on these and make it simple, or we could stop now.
I personally would like to get through this list.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're gonna get you a 2/3 thumbs up or thumbs down as per our original process, but we're gonna tighten it down. So I'm looking for a thumbs up or thumbs down on each of these recommendations. Anne recommends that we avoid calling for point of order relative to a comment being germane. Thumbs up or thumbs down, please.
I'm not sure what that means.
So in other words, Holly, you're saying that Anna's saying avoid calling for a point of order when somebody makes a comment that is off the topic, germane, off the topic.
Yeah, because she's worried that you'll get into a spin about what is germane.
Thumbs down for me because that's a good reason to have a point of order. So
Okay, Commissioner Bill, Zita, where you at? Thumbs.
I don't really understand where this comes from.
Okay, we're gonna skip. This is a really small item. We're gonna skip it. You guys can deal with this on another day. Okay, so we're just, because this is such a small one. Any member may make a point of order when rules are broken. Also, Anne recommends that staff may make a point of order. Let's see a thumbs up or a thumbs down, please. So thumbs up, thumbs up. Joe, where you at?
I'd like to restrict it to the commissioners or the executive director. I
Okay,
mean, I don't really, I think she means executive director may also make a point of order. So in
Yep.
that case, thumbs up.
thumbs up. Bill, where you at? Thumbs up. So we got 2 on that. So we'll assume, again, we'll assume that is how we're operating unless a commissioner comes and makes a different motion on the floor at a regular meeting. We're on 13. You guys are doing great. Breathe. Let's do it. We can do it. Would a training by the firm, whose name I cannot pronounce, would that be helpful? This is just as simple like, do you think it would help? So I'm seeing a thumbs up from Zita. McGregor? Thumbs down?
I'm kind of this way.
Okay,
I will say that I learned a couple things about public comment from the last session with Ann. You basically, let the public speak, period. I mean, let the public speak, period. And that's it, as long as it's not, causing a riot in the room. So that's I don't need a training to understand that sentence.
so you're a thumbs down. Bill, could you say one way or the other where you're sitting on that? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Say again.
Number 13. You think we need, Joe is saying that he doesn't think we need more training. He feels like he's got what he needs. Where you at?
I'm
Thumbs down. Rita? You were a thumbs up, I think, right? Okay, so that was a 2 to 3 there. And then we're on 14. Would having a parliamentarian present at our meetings to support our process be something to explore? I'm seeing a thumbs up from Bill. Joe, a thumbs up from Zita. So that's a 2 to, I'm seeing a 3 to 3. Okay, so we will come back to that. We're on 15. Commissioners should copy ED on any emails to staff. I'm seeing a 2 thumbs up from Joe. Now we're seeing some energy rising in the room, and a thumbs up from Bill. So that's going to be our process unless somebody else comes forward. I see your some hesitation there, Zita. Excellent. So noted. So again, if you want to bring something forward, you can. 16, which has no number. It's the mystery one. Commissioners may not overstep their authority in outside communications, must keep PD informed. We're going to see a thumbs up or a thumbs down on that.
I don't know what that means.
It means
It's pretty vague.
Okay. Sam, do you feel like you could describe it?
Certainly. It's copying the executive director or otherwise notifying the executive director of communication with any other agencies or legislative bodies such as city councils, government agencies, et cetera. Does not necessarily mean every email to anyone asking for information, but if you're communicating with bodies, then ask for the courtesy and the requirements so that I can keep the rest of the commission informed.
Okay, so with that clarification, can we see a thumbs up or thumbs down on that? Thumbs down, thumbs up. So where are you at?
I'm going to give comment if I can.
Yes, please.
I think that anytime that we are giving an opinion, providing some kind of communication from the commission should have voted to approve that communication. If I'm writing to the governor and saying, I really want to see the climate change model impacted and put onto the all ports in the state of Washington, and I sign it, Port of Olympia Commissioner, blah, 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 then I'm representing the commission at that point, even though I may not have brought it to a commission meeting for approval or to send it. If we're going to do that, either A, all three commissioners sign it, or it is brought to a commission for the commission meeting for approval by a vote of the commission to approve sending it. And it could be a 2-to-1 vote that it gets sent. But I think that is a formal process. If you're at a meeting and you want to give public comment, you need to put a disclaimer in there that I am not speaking on behalf of the Port Commission, but I'm speaking as a citizen of this community. And so that there's a differentiation there. And so I think that anytime we're giving it as something from the commission, it should be something that the commission has approved.
That's a very important distinction that Commissioner McGregor makes. Commissioners may act as private citizens or as commissioners.
Mm-hmm. And I think also you're really representing the principle of the one voice, you know, that you're a body speaking, you know, okay, which I think is what that point was with Ann about commissioners may not overstep their authority in outside communications.
Right, and in the example I give, I think it is impossible to separate your role as a commissioner and your role as a private citizen when you're communicating with other elected bodies, which has happened recently, where communications was sent to the city councils of Lacey, Olympia, and Tumwater, and the county, and did not copy me on that communication regarding broadband initiatives. And so, you know, it's just really important that the executive director be included in communications of that type.
Okay.
Okay, Holly, we need to wrap it up.
Okay.
We got one more topic. And did you get a vote on this last one?
We're voting on it right now, Joe. I'm right with you. Okay, thumbs up then on this as it's been described, and I'll get that clarity in the notes, and a thumbs down from Zeta. Okay. And you've been, that was like so much process fun, I can barely stand it. So good job, you're winners. Thank you all. And yeah, I'm gonna turn off my screen. I might just listen for a little bit as I clean up my notes, but thank you all. Great to be
Well,
with you.
thanks, Holly. Thanks for
Okay.
guiding us through that. Okay.
Great, and we're gonna jump right in, Aspen, into the interlocal, right? Thank you, and commissioners, this is going to be very quick. This does not require any action, obviously, and on your part, it's really a heads up that the next step of the sea level rise partnership between LOT and the city of Olympia is going to be coming before you sometime in the ensuing weeks or months. Next slide. Just to give you some background, if you'll remember last year, you did approve an interlocal agreement establishing an interjurisdictional governance framework. So next slide. So the current documents that were included in the packet were interlocal agreement, a draft interlocal agreement establishing the Olympia Sea Level Rise Response Collaborative that will be made up of the 3 agencies, as well as the bylaws for the collaborative. Next slide. It does have one a clause in there that I wanted to make sure to point out, is that each member is obligated to contribute funds to defray the cost for a part-time staff person. Liaison costs for the 2021 calendar year are anticipated to not exceed $40,000. I believe in listening to the commissioners speak, I believe there is a general support for this amongst the commission. However, you've not taken action on it, and it was not included in the Port's 2021 budget. So I just wanted to point that out. You would not need to really formally consider this until we actually bring the ILA back to you for your formal consideration. Next slide. So the next steps is that the planning members will convene the Sea Level Rise Joint Administrative Committee in April. They'll be reviewing these documents, and then we'll be sending these two documents, once they've been kind of approved by the Joint Administrative Committee, back out to separate meetings of the participating governments for their approval. So there won't be a joint city lot and Port meeting. They'll instead take the documents and send them back out to us for review. So at that point, I will do some research as to, I don't believe that you'll necessarily need to amend the 2021 budget. I think that we'll probably have a line item that we can put that expense in should the commission decide to participate in that. So we can address that issue when the documents actually come back for your consideration. And that's it. So if you have any other have questions or concerns that you would like me to relay to the representatives who are shepherding this, they're mostly city staff at this point. Though there's quite a number of people that participate.
Commissioner McGregor has a question. Thanks, Sam.
So what's the timeline on the hire? Have they hired somebody?
I don't believe so. I think it's primarily for the latter part of 2021. So I think that they need to get this agreement into place and then hire.
So is this 40,000 only for the half year then, or is that for
I think so,
a full
yeah.
time? So okay, so we'll have to have about 13,000 plus
exactly
budget line item, and then will Olympia be hiring, or will we, or
It will
will
be
we have?
Olympia.
Well, wait a minute, wait, or does Lot and Olympia and the Port have people on there to interview?
I believe that it is Olympia's hire at its sole discretion. So I'm not 100% sure of that, and it's something I can follow up on.
I can give some information about that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the executive committee discussed sharing this cost when we drafted the ILA last year. The city of Olympia has borne the full cost for administrative staffing all these years that we have been working together on Sea Level Rise, and the other partners agreed that we should share that. City of Olympia continues to provide the administrative staffing. We are also in discussion with other entities about the possibility of sharing a staff person and about the possibility of writing a grant proposal to get funding for a staff person next year. So I think that's pretty likely that that's going to happen in the future. But what we would be doing right now by contributing a little over 13,000 would be paying our fair share of the administrative staffing burden, which Olympia has taken on completely over all these years of Sea Level Rise work.
Thank you, Commissioner.
So Commissioner McGregor, just from the agreement itself, that initially the city of Olympia is to fill the liaison position. And then there's an annual work plan and budgeting process. And during that process, the executive committee is to determine and approve by August 31st of each year the subsequent year's budget for the liaison so that you'd be able to factor it into your budget process. So this is an initial cost for this year, but then in the subsequent years, it appears from the language of the agreement that you would receive that information and have input into it as part of this executive committee representation.
Thank you.
Certainly. And just so you know, I have reviewed the agreement and I have and it went through some fairly extensive vetting by council for the city of Olympia as well as Lot. So luckily by the time it came to me, there was not a whole lot of work to do on it. It's fairly straightforward, but it does address those specific items and the cost.
Great.
Good. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks,
All
Sam.
right.
Good. Thanks, Sam. You're going to move right into
Yep. Right into
upcoming topics.
next
Okay.
topics. Exactly. Go ahead to the next slide. We have for next Monday's meeting, the Washington Department of Transportation Aviation grant resolution that will be on the consent agenda. It's a very small amount and very perfunctory. We do have the Destination Waterfront Development Plan. We have that listed there as action, though in further review, we will likely not be asking for any type of formal action from the commission on this. Nevertheless, we will make a second presentation and continue to gauge your input. I did list the potential storage for the USS Olympia on here. I think that's unrealistic. I mean, we'd have to have something in the packet for by tomorrow to get into the packet, and that's not going to happen. So I'm going to need to work with the city on that. And then we have a public works contract for miscellaneous electrical work that will be coming for advisory. And I see Commissioner Zita has her hand up.
Thanks.
So I'm glad to hear that we're not likely to be asked to act on the Destination Waterfront Development Plan. I hope that that is because of Ann McFarland's advice that commissions not approve or accept any project reports.
Yeah, it's a little different than that. It's much more based in land use and whether or not this would actually be amending our comprehensive scheme, et cetera. So I don't see this as simply a report from a consultant. Nevertheless, I think that I'm happy to go over this with the commission next week, given that we're running out of time here, that this is really that the action before the commission is not one of acceptance or adoption. So and I'll explain that in more detail, but it's not really from Ann McFarland's recommendation in so much as it is from whether or not it's because it involves land use.
In that case, we should add the discussion to a future work session as to whether commissioners choose to accept Ann's recommendation that we not accept or adopt reports. So I ask that we add that to a future workshop discussion, work session.
Okay.
Well, Commissioner, okay. So Commissioner Zita is making a motion to add whether or not to accept
I'm making a
reports.
request.
Commissioner Zita, for the sake of clarity, once again, and to direct staff properly, I think you need to make a motion, have it seconded and approved by the commission.
Okay, then I move
Before
that
items.
move that we discuss at a work session soon Ann McFarland's advice that we not accept or adopt reports.
Okay. Great.
Uh,
Next slide.
Thank you. Thank you. Wait a second.
Oh,
It's
sorry.
been moved that we take Ann McFarland's advice to not accept or reject reports. Is there a second?
I move that we discuss that soon. Not that we make a decision now. I move that we discuss it soon.
So Commissioner Zeta has moved that we have a discussion at a work session of whether or not to accept Ann McFarland's advice on approving reports that are submitted to the port. Do I have a second?
I'll second that for discussion.
So
Can I
it's been
bring,
moved and seconded. Bill McGregor, would you like to discuss?
thank you, Commissioner. I looked up in my handy little guide that I have called Robert's Rules of Order for Dummies. And on page 331, it says, making motions to accept or receive reports, and it is not recommended that we do that. What it says is the chair should just report that the report will be placed on file. In other words, we just take it in and it goes on file for future reference. So I don't know where we want to go with this motion here, but that's what it states. And so I would have to concur that that's the way to handle this, is that when it comes up, that the chair would just say that we will place this report on file. And so it does not allow for accepting. So Commissioner Zeta is right, and I'm going to support that. So
Thank you, Commissioner McGregor, and thank you, Commissioner Zeta, for bringing that up. Now that two of the three commissioners haven't expressed an opinion, nevertheless, we have, it's been moved and seconded that we have a work session to discuss Ann McFarland's advice that we not accept reports. So given the fact that you've kind of expressed the opinion that that's a legitimate statement by Ann McFarland, I'm going to now ask for if you want to take the time in a future work session to discuss this further. All those in favor, please say aye.
no,
Opposed, please say nay.
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 Nay. Well, in that
Okay,
case,
great.
I move that we just decide the question now.
You don't have to decide the question that's in Robert's Rules, that we only place the record on file. So there is no need to take any kind of a motion.
Well, in the interest of brevity and keeping to our schedule, it is 2 minutes after 5, and I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Sorry, and my apologies to our executive director. We have to end the meeting. So, and I do have another commitment, so I'm being a little bit selfish here, but nevertheless, it is 5:02. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? I second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody, for participating.
Thank you.